Our next fantastic speaker, and yes, the drones are coming. But our next fantastic speaker hails from Google. Before joining Google in 2010, Nicholas Whitaker spent a decade producing, directing, editing, and shooting thousands of videos and images for news, commercial, entertainment, and advocacy media. Today, he leads the outreach and training for the Google Media team, and he spent the last year meeting with more than 5,000 journalists in more than 30 countries and talking to them about how they use technology, what the trends are in the tools they're using. And he's here today to share some of those findings with us. How you guys doing over there?
I think we're getting close.
All right. Take it away, Nick.
Hello, how are you? I think $1 million idea would be a PowerPoint presentation system that worked for everybody universally. I spend a lot of my time actually traveling, as she mentioned. I travel around the world these days, and I have a little bit of tech envy, I think, for this particular panel. I don't have anything that blinks. I have a laser pointer that kind of works. But really what I do is I travel the world training journalists. I wouldn't even really say that I'm a journalist anymore myself. I was always kind of a entrepreneur. I was a videographer or a predator, as we were being called for a little while there. But what I've really been moving into these days more than anything is education. And since I started my role at Google over the last several years, we've really expanded. We started out teaching geo tools, so Google Maps, Google Earth, how to integrate those into broadcast. We kind of broadened that out over the last couple of years to incorporate a wide swath of all of the different tools that are available for journalists. So the team that I'm on is called the Google for Media team. We're based across a large area of the US. My colleague, Vanessa Schneider, who's kind of the expert now on Google Maps and Google Earth, she's based out of California. My boss, Daniel Seberg, who some of you may know, is based out of New York City, and I've recently expatriated out of New York City because I, too, was curious about how much I'm sleeping. So I actually moved to Boulder, Colorado, and that's where I'm based out of now. We're focused on education. We're really trying to inspire journalists to use our tools, use them more effectively, and use them within the ecosystem that they're already using other tools at. Let's get a quick show of hands here. Who uses Google Search? Yeah. So a lot of you. And the idea is not so much, are you adopting tools that you haven't used before, it's how do you use the tools that you're already using more effectively or in a more professional way. I think we're somewhere close to about 5,000 or 6,000 journalists that we've trained so far in the last 2 years across 30-some countries, as she mentioned. I just came back from Southeast Asia and the EMEA region. Journalism is changing, and it's changing in very interesting ways depending on where you're at in the world. And we're really just trying to find ways to reach out to journalists, trying to find ways to give them new tools to help them do their jobs more easily. We created a website, google.com/media tools, which we've actually regionalized. So it's available, I think, in 76 different languages now, something along those lines. So you can go to your region of choice, you can find media tools and find it in your language. We also have a Google Plus page, plus Google for Media, and a lot of tips and tricks, examples from journalists around the world. So if you're creating stuff with our tools, share them with us. We'll share them with other people. I think some of the best ways to learn is to see how other people are using technology and borrowing from some of their ideas. And we're linking with other teams within Google, like the Google Ideas team, which have created this suite of tools called the Investigative Dashboard, which I can talk a lot more about in our lunch session if you're interested. We're going to be in the Capitol room during lunch. We're going to be doing a little bit of an office hour. So if you have questions about Google's tools, or if you just want to kind of pick our brain, that's a really good opportunity. Me and my colleague Maddie will actually be there to talk about a lot of that. In addition to the newsroom visits that we do, where we're actually going to individual newsrooms and training small teams, graphics teams, or editorial teams, we also do the Summit series, which I think we're on our 6th summit now. The most recent one's in San Francisco and Los Angeles. We have one coming up pretty soon in Washington, D.C. And the idea behind that is not to sell products and not to really get people to use our tools so much, but to provide a space of learning and a space for interaction. So the first half of the day is really spent doing thought leadership, panel discussions and keynotes about local journalism and what people are doing. And then the second half of the day is digging more into Google's tools and teaching people how they can actually use those tools for the work that they do. I mentioned the newsroom visits. It's a small selection of some of the, it looks a lot more impressive when the screen is full screen. This is some of the locations we've gone to in the last few months. And again, I think we'll probably talk a little bit more about this when we start getting into the panel discussion. Journalism is very different around the world, and people's experience with journalism and with new technology is very different. And I think that's one of the most exciting things for me is going to a place like, Vietnam, or Cambodia, and seeing how they're using social media, and what that means for them from a storytelling capacity. We have a wide range of different people that we're talking to, big and small. I think some of the most exciting news groups that I've talked to are not necessarily the big tier, very large groups, but some of the local affiliates, people that are really innovating, people that are really trying to push the boundaries because they have to stay relevant. And a lot of the lessons that we've been getting from here, it's, people are excited, they want to learn, and they're afraid as well. A lot of people are being confronted with new technology, being confronted with new opportunities, and they just either don't have the skills or don't know where to find the skills. So that's a lot of what we're working on, is trying to make that easier for people to find. There's also a huge opportunity for, what we're calling the entrepreneurial journalist, or just entrepreneurialism. So finding ways to get your message out there, finding new technologies, and finding ways to make money off that is possible. And the barrier for entry is getting lower and lower all the time. I think that there's a lot of additional, aside from the media tools site, there's a lot of additional resources that are available to a new journalist or even an old journalist who's trying to learn new skills. And those opportunities are available in ways that they weren't available, say, 10 or 15 years ago because of the internet. And we're also taking a look at core groups that are really pioneering a lot of this work, with data visualization, investigations, and tools like Hangouts and even Google Glass and mobile technology. Who has a smartphone in their pocket right now? Yeah, pretty much everybody. You have a mobile production studio in your pocket if you just know how to use it correctly. So, figuring out ways to capture information from the field and then send that back or send that to your audience immediately, that's how breaking news is going to be covered in the future, I think. Additionally, we have our own Google tools, which is something that we highlight quite a bit. Google Search, as we got a show of hands, everybody that's using Google Search here. Also, Google Trends is available. A lot of different tools about how to use these particular products as a professional as opposed to an average user. That's really what we're all about. Also, people are taking advantage of Google Maps. So Maps Engine Lite, Fusion Tables. There's a lot of different products built in within the Google Maps section to help visualize information or get your story out there. The Google Maps API. So if it's not, if it's you want to change the background, or if you want to be able to add additional elements or make it even more interactive, the Maps API allows you to do a lot more with that. There's a tool called Crisis Response, which I could talk more about in our lunch session as well. When a crisis happens, how do you get information to the people that need it the most? How do you provide that in a way that's easy and that's visual? You can do this as a journalist yourself. You can take advantage of crisis response tools to be able to get people the information in your region in times of need. In addition to that, Google Earth. I come from a broadcast background. I'm a visual person, so my big mission has always been, how do you integrate these tools into existing workflows? How do you get somebody who's using a content management system to be able to use things like Google Earth to help visualize information? And we're seeing journalists around the world being able to do that. Here's a good example of the Washington Post. This is actually Google Earth imagery that they took. They chopped down and then put it into a interactive visualization online. And then you get other people working with things like Google Plus and Hangouts. And again, I think, and this is me partially taking off my Google hat, but I think that things like Hangouts and this interactive component that Hangouts has is really kind of bringing that promise of the internet alive, the promise of the democratization of media. We all have the ability now to interact with our audience and engage with our audience, or more importantly, bring the voice of our audience into that discussion and make them part of that journalistic experience. And we're seeing people do that now using this platform. And then, of course, YouTube. It's not just skateboarding dog videos and cute cats. It's also journalism. It's also news. And finding ways to be able to take advantage of that. Oh, look at that. Our fellow here from Vice Media. A good example from the Ukraine here. This is breaking news. This is relevant information. And this is a platform where people are participating in. And I get the question a lot of times. It's like, well, how do I get more people to follow me on YouTube? How do I get more people to follow me on, name the social media platform of choice? And I think the key there is engaging with your audience, giving them the opportunity to interact with you. And there's tools that are available with that. Because it's not just about output anymore. It's about interaction. It's about engagement. It's about bringing people into that conversation and making that a live environment. I think the Bill Nye example that just happened recently, I don't know, you guys see the Bill Nye Hangout? Some of you. It was a really kind of inflammatory interaction between the two people that were on that hangout. Actually, it was really civilized, actually, but the comment thread was, I think, one of the most engaging components of that particular experience. And I think a lot of times we neglect the comment section on our websites and within social media. But I think, in all honesty, I think that's a lot of where journalism is happening, is within that comment thread. And then again, new technology. Where are we going with that? Things like Google Glass, like Tim's got right here. I think that there is possibilities there with using new mobile technology or wearable technology as a news capturing method. The technology is not necessarily perfect yet, but I think it's getting there. And I think that the more we can adopt these new techniques and these new tools and try them out, like even drones, as we're going to be talking about later today, I think these are really powerful tools to help shape a story. So just figuring out ways to use those and incorporate those into our existing workflows is kind of the key. Again, the website that we're going to be talking about today, google.com/media tools. It's broken into a few different sections. Gather and Organize is really covering the search and trends components. How do you organize yourself? How do you organize data in a way that's useful? The Engage section is really about YouTube and Google Plus and these other tools that you can use to get your message out there, visualize and publish. It goes into the kind of the whole suite of tools that Google has that might be useful to you. Definitely check it out. And also our Google Plus page, plus Google for Media. As you're coming across these sites, if you have questions, if you have comments, if there's ways to make these sites more useful to you, get in touch with us. One of the big things that I'm going to be working on in the next several months is creating online training and linking up these tools with other people who are already creating online training modules to provide this information to you in a more useful way. So if it's not useful, let us know so we can make it more useful for you. And that's all I have. So thanks.